Hello everybody, this is Terry Ryder from hotspotting.com.au. Welcome to today's event. The question I get asked more than any other in real estate from investors and home buyers around the country is, where's the best place to buy? Where are the next hotspots? And with the various webinars that we run, that we host here with guest speakers, the ones that get the most interest, that attract the most attention and get the most registrants are the ones that focus on the question of where people should be buying today to get the best future capital growth. And as evidence of today's webinar has actually attracted a record number of registrants in the years that we've been running webinars. I'd remind all those who have registered for today's event that if you can't tune in to today's live presentation, that's okay. It's been recorded and we're going to send a link to everyone who's registered, and it will be available through various social media platforms for people to watch at their leisure. Also, a reminder that you're invited to send us your questions throughout the presentation, and at the end of our special guest presentation slideshow and commentary, we will be going to the Q&A section. That's the panel you see in front of you, Q&A. That's where you type in your questions, and we'll do our best to answer all your questions towards the end of the broadcast. Now, today's special guest presenter is Kate Hill from Advisable. Kate's a buyer's agent and experienced qualified property investment advisor, and her business, Advisable, is licensed in multiple states around Australia. She's based in Sydney, but she operates nationally, and as evidence of that, I was in Perth last week, and I bumped into Kate in Perth while I was there. I wasn't expecting to see her there. So Kate Hill, welcome. What were you doing in Perth last week?
Well, hi Terry, hello everybody. We were really just checking the area out. There's been a bit of a buzz about whether Perth is recovering, and I like to go and see these things firsthand, talk to local people, get a feel for the areas. I do know Perth, but it's always good to check in regularly with what's happening there, as you did. You know, so I know we both had kind of meetings, and getting that local on the ground feedback is critical, really, when you're not just investigating an area, but then also drilling it down to property types and yeah.
So I know we're probably going to be talking a little bit about Perth as we get into the presentation, but I was there because I see that as one of the markets of opportunity, and I think that you sort of feel the same way, that it's a market that's recovering and it's going to show a good opportunity for people to buy well for future growth.
Definitely. Yes, and a little bit more about that as we go through the presentation.
Okay. Well, over to you for your presentation, Kate. We'll be having a discussion of the locations that you bring up on the screen. So over to you.
Lovely. Well, again, hello everybody. And Terry, Terry and I love a good area chat. So we'll do a little bit of a double act every now and then. So just to get us going, there is the obligatory disclaimer that we need to advise you that information shared here is general in nature. It does not constitute any personal financial advice of any kind. And to determine whether any of these areas and strategies concept discussed, you need to make sure that they are suitable for your specific circumstances. So please consult with your licensed professionals. Okay. So just to elaborate a little bit on Terry's wonderful introduction there, at Advisable, we are independent property investment advisors. We are buyer's agents. We are development consultants. I guess I clarify our mission, which is to buy you the best available investment property in the best available growth area. We do that in a very supportive, 100% independent, we have a personal touch and a client-first approach environment. We've been working within the property investment industry for many, many years and have helped facilitate literally the purchase of hundreds of properties. And within the last 2 years alone, we've purchased over 90 properties with a total value of $33 million, would you believe? It's always scary when you add all that up. Our main focus very much recently for buying investment properties for our clients has been New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, and some in South Australia. We are licensed in multiple states, as Terry said. It's very important to us to be able to offer clients a choice. We do go beyond our own backyard. We feel that that very much can match a client's risk profile as well. More on that shortly. We are members of PIPA, the Property Investment Professionals of Australia, REBA, the Real Estate Buyers Aids Association of Australia, and the Real Estate Institute of New South Wales, and all our advisors are qualified property investment advisors and fully licensed. It's very important to me that we have all that in place. Okay, so a couple of slides just before we get started talking about areas, getting to the crux of why everybody is listening today. It's really important that you understand your risk, your own risk profile. Not every area is suitable for everyone. This is not a cookie cutter approach. That comes down to things like your purchase price. What kind of cash flow do you need? You really need to understand where you're at. Where are you at in your property investment journey? Are you just starting out? Is it property number 4? Is it property number 5? Which areas are you in? How is it going to sit with where you're at in your life, in your property investment journey? What is it that you need from this next investment? It's so important to understand all this. I really can't overstress this. And of course, it's really important to understand the importance of research that will then enable us with our clients and you to understand whether an area is right for you or not. And this is why at Advisable, we stand for a client-first approach, assessing your risk profile, seeing what's right for you, finding the area that matches that, and then find the absolute best property that we can within that area. So it's client first, area second, property third. That doesn't mean the property is the third least important thing. They are all equally important, but that's the order that we tend to do this in. And we are 100% independent. So again, that was all very important to me too. Terry, you'll love this one. We really need everybody to understand that Australia is not one single property market. We hear this all the time in the media, we read it. The majority of the media just don't understand this. They think of everything in terms of Sydney and Melbourne. 1 minute we're in a bubble, the next minute we're in a property crash. There are many, many different markets across Australia all doing different things at different times for different reasons, right, Terry?
Okay, that's absolutely true. I would say that looking at the figures that came through for performance last year, just in the 8 capital cities alone, we had a 5-speed market operating in Australia. We had markets that had been booming or starting to wind down. We had markets that were really cranking up and we're getting into a boom phase like Hobart. We had markets that were fairly stagnant, not really going anywhere in a great hurry like Brisbane, perhaps, and then there were markets still going a little bit backwards like Darwin and Perth. So all those different scenarios playing out in just the 8 capital cities. And that's normal in Australian real estate because it all comes down to what's happening in your local economy, infrastructure spending, the standard of governance in the state, all those things, population growth at a local level, far more so than national factors such as the level of interest rates, which the economists like to talk about a lot.
That's right. That's right. Beautifully said. I couldn't have put it better myself on my slide. Absolutely. As I said, Terry himself, he said we have this 5-speed market in capital city Australia. I completely agree. And you highlighted that very well. You are highlighting that very well in your most excellent Ryder reports. that one was the most recent February 2018 edition. So everybody really needs to be aware of this. So it also comes back to the question I think you get asked a lot too is, when is it a good time to buy? Well, you look at this, it's always a good time to buy somewhere, always. So there are opportunities everywhere, which again is another reason why we, yes, are based here in Sydney, but do buy property investments for our clients all over the country. Because if we were limiting ourselves to just Sydney, I don't think it would work because it's not everybody's bag. So yeah, that's where we're at there. So that really segues into our areas that we're going to talk about. The first one is that we've got a few area profiles to show in the Melbourne area, the greater Melbourne area really. Melbourne has had some great growth in the past couple of years. It's still growing. There are some markets within Melbourne, I would say, that are plateauing, coming off the boil. There are other areas that are still growing, that are very, very active markets. This is one of them. So this is the Sunshine area. Sunshine, it's Brimbank Council, out in Western Melbourne. It has had a lot of local stigma over the past few years, but a wonderful property market. You can see in the little growth chart that I've put in there, each of these slides, you'll notice, is laid out in a very similar way. So you have a map with the little green arrow just showing you whereabouts we are. Just a little growth chart of a typical suburb within that area and our residential vacancy rates. The growth charts throughout the presentation I have got from Pricefinder. All the vacancy rate charts come from SQM Research, which is a very free resource. I recommend you all have a look. So, and then there are some highlights about the area also in the text. So the Sunshine area has become a major regional hub within the Melbourne metropolitan area. It is the second most populous municipality in this Melbourne area. It's projected to grow to about 205,000 people by 2030. It has a great strategic location with proximity to CBD, the Port of Melbourne, the airport at Tullamarine. It's actually not too far from Avalon either. And it has proximity to those growth areas of Melton and Wyndham and the western regions of Victoria. It is only 8 kilometres from Tullamarine. You're there in a zip once you land at Tullamarine. There are 2 central activity areas at Sydenham and Sunshine, and the Metropolitan Planning Authority, the MPA in Melbourne, has picked Sunshine to be the capital of a national employment cluster. The median price has jumped quite a bit in the past couple of years, up to about 540,000. Again, this is a median price. You can buy property for cheaper and more expensive than that. I also go by the end of 2017 price. I'm not really looking at 2018 prices yet. We're still only midway through March. I don't think it's really anywhere near representative enough to be looking at median house prices. It's interesting to note what they're doing, but I'm still looking at end 2017 median prices. We have a median rent of 385, which leads to not great average yield of about 3.6%. So again, this, when you come to assess your risk profile, as we look at some of these areas, that isn't everybody's cup of tea, spending that kind of money with that kind of rent. So those are holding costs, because invariably the properties here in Sunshine can be a little bit older. Obviously, it depends on what you're buying. So your cash flow outcome isn't always great. But I think this area has huge potential, continues to have great potential despite the growth that it's had in the past couple of years. I think there are still legs left in this market in some of the lower priced suburbs. What do you think, Terry?
Look, I think a precinct, it's good that you've highlighted this one first up. It's a great example of a lot of things, Kate. It's Sunshine and the suburbs around it have always had a bit of a stigma as being down market, troubled suburbs, but it's a wonderful example of the reality that places that are relatively affordable and have really good infrastructure and good transport links, and that Sunshine area, it's got a major transport hub that was actually built there, $800 million facility completed just a couple of years ago. If an area offers all of that, the stigma doesn't matter. And we've seen fantastic capital growth in this area in the last couple of years. I know one of the slides I put up in one of my presentations is actually the suburb of Sunshine North. And what it shows is that the median price there 3 years ago was 400,000, now 600,000, 50% growth in just 3 years. It's got a lot to offer: affordability, great transport links. There's got university campus there. A lot of reasons why people want to live there, and it's a great object lesson for investors to see what's happened in that location.
That's right, and I think another area where it's when I say it's important to talk to local people, this can be an example of, you mentioned this. Some of these suburbs, you might get a slight recoil of horror because of some of that local stigma, but they don't often realise the potential that these areas have. But people do get a bit fixated on this proximity to the CBD, which in Sunshine and most of the areas that I like it's not critical. There are very many local employment opportunities. Not everybody commutes into Melbourne. There are, as I say, you've got the airport, you've got access to the port. There's a lot of industry that's there locally where people are employed as well.
Yeah. I think that's another. I think, Kate, that's another really important point to make that people should take on board, and that there's this myth that everything happens in the CBD, and if you're not right on the doorstep of it, you're not going to get any growth. The reality is the vast majority of the jobs in Melbourne and any city are actually not in the CBD, they're out in the suburbs. Some massive jobs nodes. The airport is always a big jobs node, and all the industrial commercial stuff that springs up around an airport.
Yes.
Most people aren't actually commuting to the CBD to work. Most of them are going somewhere in the suburbs to work.
That's right. And that brings me very nicely to our next area, which is just that little bit further south west, down towards Wyndham. So we're not too far from where we just were. Again, an area which offers very affordable homes, the same way that I think to a degree Sunshine still does too. So very affordable homes. You stand more of a chance of picking up a slightly newer property here. It is one of the most active markets in the metropolitan area in terms of sales growth. Local suburbs have achieved a combined house sales number of nearly 3,500 there in the past 12 to 14 months. Has been very, very active. That for us as buyers agents can be a bit of a challenge, but again, we do this all the time. So once you have the relationships with people there, it does make things a bit easier. This area has benefited from the $5 billion regional rail line, which has provided faster links into Melbourne CBD for those that do commute, and about 80 additional it will invest $1.8 billion on Western. So a few years ago, and I know, Terry, vacancy rates were a little bit higher, but this has absolutely now been absorbed. Vacancies are very much lower now. You can see that in the chart, bottom right there. Huge demand for property from renters and from owner-occupiers. And there is, when you look at the population growth figures here, there's definitely a strong need for new dwellings. As the population's rising at around 10,000 per year. There is a lot of land here. Between here and as you look up towards Melton and Bacchus Marsh, Tarneet, there is a lot of greenfield sites here. And as you drive through that area, it is little cubby booth by cubby booth with land sales. So I'd stick to established suburbs with those transports services in place, where there are schools, where there is infrastructure. I would still urge caution about heading too far out into the wilds of those new developments, because there is the potential for overdeveloping happening again there. You're looking at a median house price here of around about $440,000, median rent of $340,000. So the yield is slightly better than we saw it in Sunshine at around 4.1%. But I do like it. Again, not for everyone, but for the investor who has a bit of time, who doesn't mind that perhaps slightly negative cash flow outcome. I think it has really good prospects, and the population growth here is really good.
Yeah, I'm glad you pinpointed this area, Kate, because I just think this is probably right now the strongest, most active market in the Melbourne metropolitan area, driven by affordability, and there's some big jobs nodes down there and close by, and good infrastructure. Affordability is a big part of it. I do agree with what you say, just to stick to those established suburbs. Yeah. Quite often the newer development areas are further out, and they're quite a long way from the established infrastructure, particularly the motorways and the train lines and the big retail. Those sorts of things may come to those areas eventually, but in the short term, quite often they're offering sometimes things that appear attractive to investors, like duplex with a good rental return, but I sometimes wonder where's the growth going to come from, because it's not close to all the things that people need to be close to in those new areas. So the suburbs that hug the transport links that go from Melbourne down towards Geelong, such as Werribee, Wyndham Vale, Hoppers Crossing, Point Cook, those sorts of places, well established and affordable and good prospects, as you've articulated.
Very much so. So for our next little area, we're just going to jump across the bay quickly, across to Casey. Casey City Council area. So suburbs here would be Cranbourne East, Cranbourne North, Carrum Downs kind of way, those kind of areas. Population growth rate here during recent census periods was higher than almost any other Melbourne municipality. So proven population growth at a rate more than twice the national average consistently when you look at those population growth figures. It's extraordinary what's gone on down there. The local industries are very diverse. 60% of locals live and work in the area. So again, they generally do not commute into the CBD. When you look at people's journey to work, very few people actually catch the train there. Again, you talk to local people down there, and actually very few, they all claim, oh gosh, nobody catches the train, it's really unreliable and it's much easier to drive. But because they do all work and live locally, some of those streets, the infrastructure probably still needs to be worked on, which it is, because some of those streets do get the roads get a bit busy at 4 p.m. as all the tradies finish work. And council release land for development down here very responsibly. So while there is still a lot of greenfield development going on towards the east, you tend not to. What happened out at Werribee tends not to happen in this area, as I say, as land releases are managed perhaps slightly better. The growth charts have been very steady. Vacancy rates very consistently nice and low. Rents have been increasing steadily. You've got a median house price here of around 535,000 and a median rent of 405. Average yield of 3.9. So very much in line with what I generally see in this greater Melbourne area. Again, the cash flow outcome can be a little bit better because there are newer style properties here. And I've always very much liked this area just for its stability and long-term growth prospects. It's just been a very steady performer with a little bit of a jump, obviously, in the past couple of years as Melbourne has done its thing. Yeah. That's been my take on it.
Yeah, everything you say is true. It is a remarkable growth area, and again, it's got that combination of affordability, good infrastructure, and the point is well made yet again that most of the people down there aren't commuting to the CBD, so proximity to CBD becomes irrelevant. In fact, quite close to the city of Casey is the local government area of Dandenong, and that's a major area for industry. In the Melbourne metropolitan, lots of jobs there. There's factories, manufacturing plants, all sorts of things there. But I would think that people living in that Casey area are far more likely to work there than in the CBD. And just as an aside to the growth that we're seeing in Casey, just over the border, I guess just outside the Melbourne metropolitan area, we're getting into areas like the Cardinia local government area, which includes towns like Pakenham and Officer, and that's also a huge growth market.
Coming up in 2 slides' time, yes.
Okay, sorry, I'm preempting you.
It's all good, just on the same page, Terry.
It's a good segue, almost.
That's right. And it's just so important that you know anyone considering this area, that that proximity to the CBD. You might think, oh gosh, this is, it's 40 kilometres outside of Melbourne. It honestly doesn't matter. You look at the number of workers in this area and how many of them actually, as I say, catch the train and go into work. It's minuscule. And that's part of the attraction here. The fact that the homes are affordable, they can work locally, there are good schools, shopping facilities. If you do need to get into Melbourne, you can, but people's lives are down there. So I think, it's really important that we all get beyond that, it's got to be close to the CBD. And some of these areas do get overlooked, I think, because of that. And it's a real shame because look at those growth charts, to me, are compelling. and you get into these areas at the right time, your yield is still quite good, and then you get, you know, the benefit of that boom, because you have got a lot of owner-occupier interest here, which will drive your growth as they want to live in this area. So I'm going to zoom on so that we have time to go through it all. Back across the bay quickly to what I guess could be considered more regional Victoria. Is it regional? Is it not? I guess technically it is. It is Victoria's largest regional centre and Victoria's second largest city, Geelong. Population growth from 200,000 to 238,000 and expected to exceed 320,000 in the next 20 years. There's a lot of, you definitely get the buzz down there when you're there. A lot of people moving out that way from Melbourne. They've had a Western distributor upgrade. It is still being upgraded to be completed by 2022. Again, you've got the benefit of that $5 billion regional rail line, which provides faster links into the CBD. Peak hour services every 10 minutes. And people do commute from here, which is one of the things I love about Geelong, because you do have a great diversity of local industries where people can work and people have the opportunity to commute into Melbourne. So all sorts of little local infrastructure projects going on there, which I've listed: hospital expansions, new Geelong private hospitals, all things contained in Terry's very excellent area reports. A median price of, let's say, around 430,000. Again, it's going to come down to the suburbs that you're buying in. If you're in that lower priced northern end of Geelong around Coria and Orlane, you're going to pay less. But I find that those areas really have grown quite considerably in the past maybe 12 to 14 months. There was, I could see it like literally happening. Like one week I'm on the phone and I was the only one making offers, and the next week I'm competing with 5 others. I'm like, hang on a minute, where will these people come from? You could see it happening as that growth and the interest radiated out from Melbourne. Median rent of around 370. So the yield is not too bad at 4.4. Again, it's going to come down to age of property, your risk profile. Vacancy rates, lovely and low. And to me, I've featured here the suburb of Grovedale, which is, it's, I guess, a sort of a middle priced suburb. It's not necessarily higher end, but what's not to love about that growth chart, really? Very, very steady, lovely low vacancy rates. Yeah, love it. Really like this area. As I said, very diverse, great population growth, more and more people moving in. Again, some developments happening around Armstrong Creek, Warren Ponds, but they've got good rail infrastructure. They've kind of keeping up with the population growth. They are providing infrastructure. There is the dedicated train line from Lara, which is also quite popular. Yeah, what do you think, Terry? I love Geelong. Big fan.
Look, it's been on in our Hotspots report, you know, including our national top 10 recently. You could argue that currently, or certainly last year, was the strongest single market in all of Victoria, including everywhere in Melbourne. It's got so much going for it. It's sort of, we see it as an affordable lifestyle alternative to Melbourne, because it's much more affordable than central Melbourne.
Yes.
It's on a peninsula, most of it surrounded by water, so it's got that lifestyle aspect. It's got a very strong local economy. There was a time when Geelong was all about sort of manufacturing and smokestack industries, and it's evolved from that. So the fact that the big car plant closed down, I'm not suggesting that's not a blow for the people who work there, need to go and find somewhere else to work. But in terms of the Geelong economy, it didn't matter too much, because so many new things are happening, generating jobs, that the positive things far outweigh the negatives there. And we're now at a point where Geelong, the biggest employers are the health sector and the education sector, and that university campus is really, really important. And we've got things like the headquarters for the National Disability Insurance Scheme, which is a really big deal.
It is
being established in Geelong, and there's all these businesses that want to be close to it, so it's created a precinct that didn't exist anymore. So
that's right. And again, you talk to the local people, and they all make reference to that. They all know that this is going on. There's definitely there is that buzz. You know, they know that it's great for the area. They can feel that it's an area on the move.
Yeah, I think it's definitely true.
Yes. So sticking with our regional Victoria theme, we will move across to Pakenham. Again, population growth rate here during census periods was very good. It's been growing at a rate more than twice the national average and expected to double again by 2036. It's quite a young population here with an average age of around 32. Regional jobs creation here has been significant. You've got really good diverse industries with construction, healthcare, retail, manufacturing as the top four. I could possibly think of a couple of ifs and buts here. I'm definitely open to discussion. It's an area that's on my watch list, if you like. A proposed third airport, proximity to Port Hastings, distance to CBD isn't wonderful, I'll admit, with over 50% of the workforce commuting over an hour by train or car. And they all do state that investment in infrastructure is necessary here. But again, look at the growth chart. Very steady, lovely low vacancy rates. You can't argue with that, you know. But it's mentioned locally, especially that commute time into town. Median house price of around $460, rent at $350, and again, your typical Melbourne and outer Melbourne yield of around 3.9%. An area, as I said, it's on my watch list. It's on my to visit very, very soon again list, Terry.
Yeah, like Pakenham and Officer and the whole local government here of Cardinia just popped up on our radar screen because we could see when we looked at the sales volume figures that it was rising. And then more recently, when we look at the growth in median prices, it's been quite extraordinary in some of those markets. I think it's just spillover from the Melbourne metropolitan area. Perhaps people are looking for more of a country lifestyle, but still within striking distance of the big city.
Yes.
More affordable prices, all of that. We've actually seen a lot of that in Melbourne, both north and south, that the towns just outside the Melbourne metropolitan area that are a little bit cheaper than the city, but you can still commute to the city if that's where you work, keeping in mind that not everybody, again, works in the CBD. There's lots of other jobs nodes that people might be commuting to. That's definitely a trend in Victoria. Those towns, and Pakenham's an example of it, just outside the Melbourne area, are showing a lot of growth.
Yes, very much so. I've put a little note there on the vacancy rate chart to be beware of vacancy rates in that officer area, just because there is a lot of development happening. So again, you just want to be careful with those, let's call them off the plan purchases with promises of great, cash flows and yields, or rent guarantees. There's a reason for those. I would be wary of that kind of those, let's not even call them opportunities, offers. So I guess to summarise, Greater Melbourne to me does still have opportunities, very steady growth charts, really good interest from owner-occupiers. It's definitely, to me, an area that is very, all of these areas are really very solid. Dare I say low risk, in terms of volatility that sometimes you see very much further out, more regional areas. But the cash flow, again, not everybody's cup of tea. So you'd need to be mindful, how much money have you got to spend? What age of property are you comfortable holding? And what age of property is appropriate for that area? And what cash flow is going to, what holding costs are you okay with, in this area? So slightly different story as we move towards Queensland. Brisbane, Greater Brisbane. I've been buying in this area for a long, long time as we wait for it to fulfill its promise. Has ups and downs. I guess the property cycles are a little bit different. I find here that they tend to move in fits and spurts rather than, long and steady or do nothing, flatline for 8 years and then have a boom for 2 years. They tend to sort of nudge up a little bit, have a breather, nudge up a little bit. Oh, not sure what we're doing. Have a breather, nudge up a little bit. So and I think that's just reflected of certain perhaps economic uncertainties that Queensland is just subject to and has been for the past few years. But overall, I think there are very good opportunities here still. The yields are better. And, you know, when you're looking at a sort of long-term residential buy and hold, I think the arguments for buying in Southeast Queensland are compelling, very much so. Terry?
Yeah, I mean, you're right that there's been a lot of promise and a lot of expectation for Brisbane and Southeast Queensland. Brisbane hasn't yet delivered on that. Many forecasters in the last 2 to 3 years, you know, Brisbane's going to go. It hasn't yet, and I think the reason it hasn't is because it lacks the most important factor that Melbourne and Sydney have, and that's the underlying economy. And those two places have been really strong, and the population growth factors have been really strong, particularly overseas migrants. And Queensland has just been very, very mediocre as an economy in recent years. It's kind of ranked about 6th out of the 8 states and territories. Traditionally, Queensland's stronger than that, and we're starting to see evidence now that it's starting to improve. We're also seeing the evidence that the interstate migration figures are coming back to favour Southeast Queensland quite strongly. In fact, it's the biggest net gainer now.
That's right.
In terms of interstate migration. Then you've got the affordability factor. People in Sydney and Melbourne, where their properties have grown, they've got lots of equity, and they're perhaps looking for somewhere a bit cheaper and with better rental yield. So a lot of people are thinking Brisbane. That area you've got on screen, Moreton Bay, the Moreton Bay local government area, which is one of the more affordable markets up in the north. It's getting a lot of attention now, and the turnover of property is strong, and we're starting to see some pretty good growth in median prices coming through as well.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful property market, actually. Again, you could almost argue that it's been slightly two speed in terms of property growth and demand. I have found that the demand and perhaps the sales volumes of the higher end 4-bedroom properties has been stronger than the 3-bedroom properties. Still good growth, but just a slightly different market, property market within property market. And I think that's very much indicative of a very mixed demographic that you get up there. So we are about 40 minutes drive from Brisbane CBD, for those who think that's important. But also the port of Brisbane, which I do think is important. It's a big employment node. You're 20 minutes or so from Brisbane International Airport. You have a population of about 367,000 people. It's a very large council area. It's identified by the state government as a principal regional activity centre for major growth. And these things are important. I know we sort of just stick these into our presentations sometimes, but I have to stress take note of that kind of thing, because it means money's going to get spent. Money's put aside for infrastructure, for jobs growth. It is a key growth corridor with very solid economic fundamentals. Local council, I've always found, are working very hard to increase local job opportunities so people don't have to commute into the city. But if they do, you have the brand new train line, which continues to attract families seeking a better lifestyle here, and it is intended to take that gridlock away from Anzac Avenue and that enormous roundabout at Rothwell, which it does come to a standstill there as people are coming in and out. So median house price, this would be typically for a 4-bedroom property around the Rothwell area, of about 420,000. That's had a little jump in the past 12 months, maybe even less than that, 6 months. Median rent at around about 385, depends on the property, and an average yield of about 4.8%. So this mixed demographic I love up here, because you can, when I say get away with, obviously we need to pick our property type very carefully. But whereas in some areas you'll find that you absolutely must buy a 4x2 bedroom property and it's got to have this and it's got to have that. In this Moreton Bay Shire, because we have a mixed demographic of young families, young professional couples, let's wheel out all the stereotypes, older retirees, sea changers, tree changers, whatever, everybody. You've got a big mixed bag of people up there. So you're not catering for just one overwhelmingly large type of, part of the population. So you could buy a 3x1, which will do very well. You can buy a 3x2. You can buy a 4x2. You will appeal to lots of people, which inevitably is obviously something we always want to do. But as I said, I have just found that the 4-bedders in this area have just had that little bit of more interest, and there's been that little bit of price growth there in the past 6 to 8 months. But continues to be, to me, again, long-term, very stable, very good market with a very reasonable yield and good cash flow outcome for most people.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. You've said it beautifully. A really important area to consider. As far as Brisbane goes, we kind of rank that number 1 at the moment.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Port of Brisbane, the airport. I think there's an enormous amount of commercial, industrial around those two things, those two ports, the airport and the seaport, which are close together. It's called the Australian Trade Coast, and it's probably the biggest jobs node in all of Brisbane. And the suburbs you're talking about are sort of 15 or 20 minutes away, so that's an important factor. The other one is that there's a major university campus going to be built in the heart of this area, and the land's bought, it's approved. It'll be in place in a couple of years, and it will grow, operated by the University of the Sunshine Coast. So that's going to be a big factor in generating housing demand, particularly rental demand in that area in the future, in the near future.
That's right. And another sure sign for me that this area is on all sorts of people's watch list is I believe that Queensland's second IKEA was built right here. I've seen it. It's huge.
I know. I drive past and I try not to look at it because I know if I stop and go in, I'll spend way too much money.
That's right. But they set up camp. They do their research the same as we do. Costco, I hear. Those things, I always take note of these things, especially Costco, because they target wholesale and, the commercial markets as well as, normal people like you and me. So, again, they do their research. They know where to place themselves. So take note of that kind of thing. Moving south into a slightly different demographic, down towards the Logan Shire. I feel like I've talked about and been involved in this market for many, many years. The city is one of the largest and fastest growing cities or council areas in Australia. Population growth of 2% per annum and above. It's been above the national average consistently in the past 12 years for population growth. It is at the centre of a very rapidly growing southeast Queensland region in general, uniquely placed at the centre of a major transport corridor, and one of the most important economic corridors in Australia. It has direct access to 3 major arterial networks, 2 international airports, freight rail Brisbane to Sydney passenger rail line. It's very affordable, solid growth prospects, good jobs, growth here, has very strong rental yields. So median house price for a 4-bedder, 370. I was going to say for perhaps a slightly higher spec 4-bedder, maybe 390. Good median rent at around 380 to say 400. Average rental yield of 5.3%. Vacancy rates are very cyclical here. They can be a little bit up and down depending on investor interest and but also on what the homeowners are doing. So I do perhaps find that this can be one of the markets where if you've got low interest rates, a lot of people buying their own homes, perhaps fewer people renting. But in fairness, every property that we have bought for a client has been tenanted within a week to 2 weeks. You buy the right property in the right suburb, it rents. So if you do see a slightly higher than average vacancy rate in a very strong area, keep in mind that those vacancy rates lump every single property together, like a median house price would. But very good long-term prospects to me. And for some of our clients, this is a very, how should I put it? A nice buy and hold with a good cash flow, good long-term growth prospects. Don't feel that you're compromising capital growth by investing here, because long-term, it's very good to me. Yeah.
Yes, Kate, it's one of those places where you've got the established suburbs, and then further west you've got where the new suburbs are being created. And again, I like those established ones because there's this wonderful transport spine. It's the Pacific motorway that connects the centre of Brisbane to the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
And the train line connecting the two places follows that basic spine as well. And along that spine, you've got all this wonderful, probably the best retail offering in all of Queensland. It's massive.
Yes.
And lots of other infrastructure.
Including that very first IKEA. Yes, that's right.
Yes, that's right. There's an IKEA there as well. That's the one we used to have to drive to from where I live. So great infrastructure, great transport links. As you pointed out, there's 3 major motorways that intersect within the Logan Shire local government area. And not many places in Australia have that. So you can north-south hitting out. Bypassing Brisbane on the Gateway motorway to go north if you want to. It's got great transport links.
Yes, and good access, as I said, to different jobs nodes, down towards the Gold Coast that is seeing activity. Obviously, we have the Commonwealth Games coming. There's been money spent there. Again, you can head further into town. You can head out towards Ipswich. It's such a and local. There's lots going on locally. I really like it here. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Back up to your neck of the woods, Terry. So the Sunshine Coast. Again, I love what this market has been doing in the past few years. It was on my watch list for a while as the nation's 10th largest city. The council area is it's rapidly growing residential and tourist region, independently ranked as the second highest performing regional economy in the state for a couple of financial years in a row. Significant investment in the region with many infrastructure projects already complete and underway. And what I like particularly is that local industries have broadened over the past few years with growth in new industries, healthcare, education, universities, professional services. Again, the council have worked very hard to diversify local industries away from just being dependent on tourism. Vacancy rates have been very low, most suburbs with a rate less than 2%. Very stable area, and to me, continues with very great growth potential. Median price, depending on suburb, of course, $495. Median rent around $470. So again, you've got this great growth potential and a not too bad yield of 4.9%. It's geographically quite large. You'd need to be careful where you place yourself here. But I know I say this about every area we've talked about, but I love it here. I love it. So, for growth potential, when you look at that investment with a reasonable cash flow, I know it's priced perhaps a little bit up there, depends on your circumstances and your budget. But yeah, one of those, I hate this expression, no-brainers.
Yep. Well, it was I live in the hills above the Sunshine Coast, so I know it well. It doesn't mean I'm biased in favour of it. In fact, for a number of years, I had it in our no-go zone to report because essentially it was a tourist resort, and property markets based on tourism economies seldom show sustained long-term growth. But the Sunshine Coast has changed a lot. It's evolved into a real city. They built a $2 billion new hospital, and around it sprung up a whole new medical precinct with a private hospital and all sorts of other things. And the total infrastructure spend currently underway, recently completed or underway, is about $20 billion, which is massive for a city the size of the Sunshine Coast. And that's changing the economy, making it a lot stronger, creating a lot of demand for real estate. And that's the important thing. It's always about the underlying economy, and something massive has changed in the Sunshine Coast to take it from our no-go zone to report to our national top 10 best buys report. And it's performed well in response to those economic changes.
Yes. So I guess to summarise Queensland, to me there are very, very many opportunities here, long-term and short-term. As I said, I think the property cycles work a little bit differently here. They work differently in the Sunshine Coast to Logan to, again, there's hundreds of different markets in Australia doing different things for different reasons. But good long-term growth potential. And there's nothing wrong with taking a good cash flow out of this while you're holding it. So that's my take on Queensland. It continues, or Southeast Queensland, I should say. It continues to be on in our advisables top 10, definitely a lot of these areas. So just so we have enough time, Terry, I'm going to stampede onto Perth. Give us time to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, we were both there last week for a reason, right?
I know. There's clearly been a little buzz in the media about it, but knowing what I said, I think on slide 3 about the media, I like to verify these things for myself. And while there is no herd to follow yet, I think it's important to get to assess these things on the ground. Again, talk to local people, find out what's actually happening. Why is it happening? Where do they all want to live? What's important here, and what is happening with jobs? So every sign, I got a general consensus from the people that I spoke to locally that a bottom has been reached. It's a tough call, but they're all saying, oh, it can't possibly go any lower. They are sensing things turning. A lot more people are employed. The vacancy rates are coming down. The commercial vacancy rates are coming down. Rio Tinto are hiring. Honestly, every shopping centre that you drive past and every shopping centre that you go to is either being expanded or has just been expanded, improved. There's definitely a vibe in the air that things are on the turn. It's not going to happen immediately. Some suburbs, as we'll look at shortly, have had growth recently. Others are coming and are stabilising. So I guess that was my take. Things are stabilising and potentially turning soon-ish, without saying on the 1st of July 2018. But definitely, that was my take coming away from that. I think there are opportunities here, very much so, if you get in there now, soon.
Yeah. I've got no doubt about it. We've been watching the changes in the sales volumes.
Yeah.
The local real estate institute has been trying to call the bottom for a couple of years, and they've been wrong.
Yes.
But eventually they're going to be right, and now we've seen in our own figures, the sales volume figures are turning up. The economy is improving, jobs being created again. Yeah. One of the pieces of evidence that came out of our most recent research, Kate, was that the top end suburbs are actually starting to show good price growth. It was coming through the median price figures. And so I wanted to ask people on the ground in Perth when I was there last week, is this real or do the figures lie? So I was talking to buyers agents there and valuers and other practitioners, development people, and they're saying, no, that those top end suburbs, the $1 million suburbs, are actually had sort of perhaps on average a 10% uplift in the last little while. So that's indicative of the beginnings of a cycle, because what we saw in Sydney and Melbourne was that it really started in the upper end and gradually it filtered out, it rippled out to the middle ring and then the outer ring. And I think we're seeing the beginnings of that same process now starting to happen in metropolitan Perth.
Yes. So we've got a few areas just to feature here. We're starting up in the city of Wanneroo, little green arrow there, which points to the suburb of Mindarie. We are looking at a population of around 188,000 here. It's one of those fastest growing local government areas in WA. There are 9 new planned activity centres here, very affordable homes, growing industrial areas which are providing employment opportunities, new transport and road infrastructure. You've got a $1 billion Alkimos Master Plan community, which is phenomenal. I don't know if you got up that far, Terry, but it's extraordinary what's going on up there. You have natural attractions close by in terms of beaches, national parks. It's really very lovely. The Brighton Marketplace development, big Woolworths, shopping centres, town squares, retails, it's all going on. That industrial area, Wangara, is one of Perth's busiest industrial areas, with over 10,000 people working there. And it depends on who you ask and what time of day, but it only takes 37 minutes to reach the Perth CBD by train. I'm hearing quite a few local people complaining because who live closer into town, because by the time they get on the train, it's full with everyone coming in from the north. But there is talk of this line being, and I believe it has been funded, hasn't it, Terry, that this line is being extended up to Yanchep.
It's been extended in the last few years, and they're just going to continue because a lot of the new growth in Perth is happening.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
Up in the north there.
Yeah. Yes, when you drive up towards Yanchep, it's extraordinary. Again, it's reminiscent of those, the big greenfield land estates and developments that you see around between Melton and Wyndham.
Kate, could I just interject here for a moment? We've been going for 55 minutes. I guess some people have got a lunch break and may be limited. Most people who joined are still with us. I just thought it might be opportune for you. Just mention that you do have some special offers, and mention that for those who might need to get away at the end of their lunch break and then go back to the presentation.
Absolutely. Okay. Which they can listen to afterwards. So, a free, no obligation chat, portfolio review. If you'd like to give me a call after this webinar or just email me, we can arrange a time to have a chat. Very happy to do that. I'm also offering $500 off the full standard buyer's agency service if you sign up with Advisable after attending this webinar. And if you've enjoyed listening, it's more of a request and a call to action. Please do follow me, Advisable, on Facebook and Instagram. I've been putting up little videos for my field trips, gives little insights to what's going on the ground. We do like to be very free with our information. We think it's important to share what we do and why we do it. Yeah, so those are my main call to action. So give me a call and sign up, obviously.
Okay, we can go over that again at the end of the broadcast. We go back to your presentation and just remind people that to put in your questions. We do have quite a few questions already in there, and we'll get to that just as soon as Kate's got through the slideshow. We've got just a few more locations to talk about that are important to talk about, and then we'll get to the questions.
We'll zoom through. So coming down, I'll just go back one. So up there in Wanneroo, around Mindarie, we're coming down just a notch to Joondalup, population of around 454,000 people, one of Perth's steadiest property markets. I love these growth charts. You see some horrors in and around WA, not just WA, but, some of those mining affected regional Queensland towns too, where there's this massive plummet. And while I know that can look a little bit worrying, think of actually the fact that over the past few years, this market has been steady. Yes, there's been a little blips, ups and downs, but it's been long-term, very steady. There's a slightly higher than average median age here of around 40, but you have wonderfully strong amenities and services into the CBD, as we've already mentioned with the train lines. It's recognised by the state government as a main strategic metropolitan centre, and it is a driver of major economic growth. When you're here, the facilities in Joondalup are extraordinary to me. There's a huge, big shopping facilities. You've got Edith Cowan University, medical services, TAFE. It is all going on. You've got a very high level home ownership here, which to me, again, it leads to good price growth, but can also just slightly increase your risk of vacancy rates as there's a little bit of a decrease in demand for rental properties. But we can see those vacancy rates just starting to come down. While it is still a developing area, the new housing starts here are slightly lower than up in Wanneroo, because this is a little bit more of an established area. You're going to pay a little bit more at around a median price of 405,000, median rent of 370. Not too bad a yield to me at 4.7%. Again, I really like it here. I would stick to established areas. Don't wander away too far. Stick to where the trains, the shops, the schools, the uni have good access to these areas. There are some really nice suburbs here. I think there's also a couple of suburbs just to be mindful of. But great, I love it. Again, to me, solid. It's leading Perth's growth. Very steady, long-term potential to me at a good price right now. Okay. City of Stirling, we're coming down closer towards CBD. Population of approximately 220,000, which is actually the largest LGA in the state and the second largest employment area in WA. Similar to the other two markets, one of the steadiest precincts during the Perth market downturn. You've got all sorts of stuff going on infrastructure-wise, wonderful shopping and education facilities. Again, every shopping marketplace here has been developed and is being revamped. great transport into the CBD, tertiary institutions, public hospitals, retail centres. I go on forever. Slightly higher priced as we're moving in towards Perth CBD at 510,000, median rent at 360. But you can see the vacancy rates also coming down and a little bit lower than they are at North. And it has held very steady as an area throughout that downturn. You've got access to the beach. It's great. Again, a couple of suburbs I'd just be mindful of. Depends on your risk profile. It's not cookie cutter. Always remember this. There's areas within areas. Do you want to comment generally after I've gone through the areas, Terry? Might make...
Well, I'd just be reiterating what you're saying. I mean, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
I like to say about sterling, it's shown sterling performance in the downturn. It's held up really well, and it's one of the leaders as the market recovers. So if you just continue, I'm nodding. That means I'm agreeing with you. I really like this area.
Me too. Terry's nodding, everyone. So, city of Melville. So we're just heading south of the water. Population of about 98,000, a slightly higher than average median age of about 41. I think that's also reflected in the median prices down there. Really good population growth, massive Garden City shopping centre expansion. It's a major activity centre in terms of Murdoch Health and University Education Hub. You've got really good access here to Perth CBD, to the Fremantle Port, Perth Airport. Two suburbs within the Melville LGA are marked as major economic growth centres, and nearby Freo also expected to become a powerhouse upon completion of this $1.6 billion Perth freight link, which is WA's largest road infrastructure project. That is a really, really big deal. Again, great diversity of jobs nodes, industries, and things, places where people work. The Directions 2032, which has been prepared by the WA Planning Commission, will impact the city of Melville in a lot of these suburbs here. Very steady property market, but we are looking at a median price of $780 and a median rent of around $450. Again, depends on the suburb, but that yield again is not everyone's bag at 3%, but low vacancy rates. Again, very steady market.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, just a quick comment. I mean, I like precincts that have got that combination of university and hospital. I just think it brings in so much demand and has a dynamic to the area. And that precinct, that Murdoch precinct with a big university campus, a new hospital and an existing hospital, it's quite massive.
Yes. Yeah. And those were our 4 feature Perth precinct areas for stability. I think there are obviously others out towards the east, towards the south, but these are the ones that I feel for the short to medium term have perhaps the most stable potential growth-wise and dropping vacancy rates, where you see that stability happening. I could actually spend the next 3 hours just talking about Perth, Terry, but we haven't got time to do that.
Unfortunately.
No, we don't. So I think very much, as I said earlier on, a stabilising area. As Terry says, the sales volumes are up in many of these precincts, which will translate to growth in the coming times ahead. I think we need to see it happening or stabilising, and you'd need to, as an investor, just assess your risk profile as to when you may be expecting growth, and obviously, as I say, the budgets that you have for investing here. So I'll just quickly run through another area that I know Terry and I both like. Right at let's just fly 5 hours, get on a plane, 5 hours across to Newcastle. One of the reasons I love this area, again, is its stability. I want to draw your attention just quickly to this growth chart down in the bottom right. I left this in here. When I say I left it in here, I sort of chose to feature this one particularly to highlight what's happened there in that median, or allegedly what's happened to that median price in that 2018, you can see that little sharp drop. That does not mean that the suburb of Waratah or Newcastle is crashing. It's just a again, I urge you to be mindful and aware of how these kind of figures are presented in the media. But Newcastle itself, population 160,000, 8th largest city in Australia, still renowned as the world's largest coal export port. Advantage of being an industrial economy and a service economy. It has had a major transformation over recent times. Anyone who's been there or knew Newcastle a while back will know we all thought it was going to just crumble into nothing after BHP. It did nothing of the sort. It has an expansion, has diversified, expanded into health, higher education, defence industries, all sorts of other things going on. One of the nation's leading growth cities. It's a very affordable alternative to Sydney. You can see that little upswing that's happened there also in the past couple of years as people got fed up with paying the prices that they do in Sydney and have moved out to seek other opportunities. Depending on the suburb, a median price of around $617, pretty decent little property, median rent of about $420, average yield there at 3.5%, and that 617 isn't always going to buy you the newest property in the world, so that cash flow outcome won't always be wonderful. Again, you need to assess your risk profile and whether this is right for you. Consistently lovely low vacancy rates, and to me one of the steadiest performers out there as an area. Still like it.
Yeah, one of the absolute strongest markets for price growth in Australia last year, and there's plenty of areas around Newcastle worth considering as well as that factor sort of ripples out the local government area of Lake Macquarie and the Hunter Valley, places like Maitland and Cessnock and others, very close to Newcastle.
And I guess finally, we did wanted to just touch on South Australia because I know Terry likes it too. I do as well. It's one of those, I haven't featured any particular areas here because we've already talked about a lot of different areas, but I do urge you to keep it on your watch list. It's one of the most consistent markets across the country. It has many, many growth suburbs in terms of sales volume. Growth markets are spread across that metropolitan area. It has good yields. Adelaide, as I say, has impressed with very, very steady performance. It gets very little national attention, doesn't seem to excite people, but it does show great resilience, growth potential. It does grow, it just tends to get overlooked. At the moment, when you read Terry's reports, we see that Adelaide Southwest is leading the market in South Australian, in the South Australian capital. The city's north features a couple of LGAs at the lower end of market, which are also performing strongly. They always do. And there's great yields, good affordability. What's not to love? It just, I don't get overlooked, Terry.
We could talk about Adelaide for a couple of hours as well. I think it's very, very underrated. And the underlying economy is better than people realise, and I think it's getting stronger, and there's things happening that are not really commanding the national attention they deserve.
Yes.
And they've just elected a new government, and that can tend to give economies and probably markets a bit of a lift as well. So
yes.
Yep. Yeah. But don't get me started on Adelaide, otherwise time will run away from us.
I know. We'll have one of our 10-hour-long conversations on the phone. So that really concludes the areas that we've been talking about. I'll just bring up a little call to action again. Please do give me a call, have a chat about where you're at. If you're struggling with area decisions, that's what we do. It's our speciality. I'm offering $500 off the full standard buyer's agency service price if you sign up as a result of attending this wonderful webinar. And please do follow us and like us on Facebook and Instagram. So, Terry, questions? I'm sure they're out.
Yes, we do have quite a few questions, and we'll stay with it. We've been going for over an hour. We'll stay with it for another 15 minutes or so because there are questions, and I'll toss them at you, particularly the difficult ones, Kate. Here's a listener just asking, where's the best place to buy under $350,000 in Australia right now? I know it's a hard one to answer, but
it is a hard one to answer. I refer you back to slide 3. In terms of cash flow need, tenant demographic, yes, age of property that you like. Look, have you got property somewhere else? You know, that's why it's so important. I urge you to speak to professionals, because there's one thing that I might pick an area at 350,000. I have to go southeast Queensland. We're not going to be buying at that price really in any of the outer Melbourne suburbs with a property type that's in demand. So that's the other thing I would say. So if you have 350,000 to spend and you want to go to Melbourne, you know, be careful what you're buying. Don't be tempted to go into a property type just because it's cheap and you can afford it there. You might be vacant there because it's not the appropriate property type for that area. So look for the area that you can afford to buy the property type that is most in demand in the area at the price that you can afford, which at 350,000 could even be the Ipswich area, it could be the Logan area. You could go up to the Moreton Bay area, but again, it depends on your risk profile. Sorry, I know I don't mean to be evasive, but you're going to be buying an older property for 350,000 in Moreton Bay than you are in Ipswich, where you can buy something that's 5 years old. So the best area to buy, it's not the best area, it's the best area for you at this point in your investing career, your life, your personal life. What cash flow do you need? But it would be southeast Queensland in that price point, perhaps even Adelaide.
Yes.
Yes.
Joe has asked, I mean, a lot of the questions actually, my first reaction, there's no one right answer. It depends on your personal circumstances as to, and I think you've articulated that quite well.
Yes.
Joe's asking, what are your thoughts on the Coomera area, sort of northern Gold Coast, that corridor between Gold Coast and Logan City?
Look,
what do you think property prices will do after the Commonwealth Games on the Gold Coast, which start very soon?
Coomera, as the Gold Coast goes, if somebody held a gun to my head and said I have to buy in the Gold Coast, it would be the inland. I guess I call it the suburbs where normal people live, where normal people live and work and go to school, live their lives, not the extremely volatile touristy areas of the Strip, anywhere near, you know, your Mermaid Beach, those kind of places. So Coomera would feature among the suburbs that I consider more stable. It's a little bit more expensive. Will it? Look, they will get that. I would think they'd get an injection from the Commonwealth Games there. I can't see those areas doing a great deal or crashing afterwards because they are steady, because normal people live there. I think it's okay, is what I would say.
I think the Gold Coast is, to a certain degree, has had the uplift it was going to get from the games because it was the construction period, the infrastructure. Lots of people came into work on those projects. Most of them are now finished, so a lot of those workers leave, and we've seen sales activity drop off on the Gold Coast. Subsequent to that, there'll probably be a bit of a sugar hit from the Commonwealth Games, but I think the impact is probably going to be overrated by the big marketing, spruiking output that's going to come from the Gold Coast. And I agree with you, stay away from the high-rise suburbs and stick to the genuine suburbs inland.
Very much
There was a general question here, Kate, which is probably a good one for a buyer's agent to answer, and it says, how do you negotiate a lower price? I know that you're paying less than what a property is worth. I guess my answer would be get yourself a good buyer's agent to do it for you, because that's what they're paid to do. But what would you say? It's a very general question, but...
It is, and again, I don't mean any of this to be evasive, but we have the entire continent at our feet. So where are we buying? How do you negotiate a low price? In any part of Melbourne, good luck with that, is what I'll say. You can be aware of the market conditions, be aware of the market conditions that you're buying in. So the key to obviously paying a good price that is below fair market value is, first of all, know your market value. It never ceases to amaze me that, you know, that people would make an offer on a property based on the median house price of an area. You need to know the actual market value based on comparable sales of what's in that immediate area around there. What is that property actually worth? Assess the seller's circumstances. Why are they selling? Do they need to sell? Some of this is common sense, really, but I can't stress highly enough that market value, know what the property's worth in your mind without a shadow of a doubt before you even think about making an offer. Find out why the vendor is selling, know the property, obviously inside out, know what you're going to rent it for, what's your budget, and know your market conditions. I will never ever sit here and guarantee anyone that I will pay for you on your behalf under market value. I will try. We will always try our hardest. We will set out to do that. But there are some markets where that just simply isn't going to happen because the markets are very, very active. We do get off-market listings offered to us as buyers agents because we've dealt with people before, and that can be possible. But if you don't have those kind of contacts, that can be really difficult in those very, very active markets because you're trying to buy 30 grand below market value and they've got 10 other people on the phone. They're not going to give you the time of day.
Yeah.
So know your market conditions, know your market value with unquestionably within $1,000 in your mind. This is what this property's worth, and find out why the seller is selling.
There is a lot to know about negotiation. There's whole books written on the subject.
Yes, I know, and it's different every time.
and it's very difficult to answer a question like that in a single sentence. But it's great to have a professional like Kate Hill on your team when it comes to negotiating property. That's what the service is at least partly about. Stephen?
Yeah, sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was about to move on to the next question. Stephen's asking, a question I get asked a lot, and again, it's difficult to answer in a single sentence, but are you better to look for a cash flow positive property or for capital growth? Or can you have both? And if so, where? So answer that in a single sentence, Kate, if you can.
Can I have 2 sentences? Top priority has to be capital growth. It depends what stage you're in. I'm into sentence 3 already. It depends what stage you're investing you're at, where, and your personal circumstances. There I go again. To me, capital growth, there is no compromising capital growth, but to me, you can have them both. So the key to my answer is that you can have capital growth and a cash flow that is okay for you and your personal circumstances. So depending on what entity you're buying in, depending on your income, the ownership structure, all that sort of thing. What sort of holding costs are you okay with? Does it have to be neutrally geared? Does it need to be neutral cash flow? Everything's negatively geared these days, pretty much. So what level of holding costs are you okay with? I would say, to try and summarize, don't compromise. You must go for capital growth, and you should aim for a cash flow that suits your personal circumstances. I wouldn't go chasing a positive cash flow property if it means that you are severely compromising your capital growth potential. Yeah.
I think the short answer to the question is it is possible to achieve both. I think you're right. Capital growth has to be paramount.
Yeah.
If you choose the right locations and they're available in capital cities, good rental yields and capital growth potential are available, particularly in the Brisbanes and the Adelaides, and some of the better regional centres.
Yeah, some of the Perths, I think too. Yeah.
A question from another attendee asking what's your views on Hobart and Canberra. Kate, do you have views on those 2 cities?
You go, Terry.
Okay. Hobart right now, I believe, is the hottest market amongst the capital cities of Australia. It's very, very strong, too strong, really. The best time to buy there. We were telling people about Hobart about 2 years ago, and it would have been great if everybody had bought then. Right now, you could say that it's too hot to buy sensibly because property is selling so quickly that I don't know how people can do proper due diligence and check things out and do all the things that you really should do buying property because it's all selling so fast. It's selling fast because the Tasmanian economy has improved hugely. Hobart is the cheapest of the capital cities. It's got the best rental yields. It's got vacancies almost zero. I mean, it's an opportunity for people to develop in that market because they're desperately short of rental accommodation. So there's an opportunity there. But in pure investment terms, I think that the time to buy there is past because it's going ballistic.
Agreed. Canberra's different.
Canberra, do you have a view on Canberra, Kate?
I do. I think that it is worthy of consideration depending, stating the obvious, on your budget and your cash flow outcome. But a lot of those suburbs are very, very steady performers. So I wouldn't say I'm indifferent. It doesn't excite me hugely, but I am seeing signs that that Canberra market is becoming more and more active. It's entering a growth phase.
Yeah, I think it is. I know the BIS Oxford Economics, with their forecast, have Canberra leading on capital growth amongst the capital cities for the next 3 years. That's just one forecaster. Not necessarily true, but I do think Canberra's going to be a contender. It's rising. And it's always solid because it's underpinned by that sort of, it's a capital city, it's an unnatural city.
Yeah.
It always has the lowest unemployment rates, it's always got the highest average incomes. And the ACT government drip feeds land to the market in a way that keeps values high because supply is always less than the demand. So it's worth considering, but it's quite an expensive city to buy in. Let's see. There was a question here that's about, yes, we're in the Sydney area. Kate, you might have a thought about this. Would you suggest buying an old house for renovation? So buying in an area in Sydney that's right for renovation. Is that an easy one to answer?
No, it's not. How much have we got to spend? Gosh, you're in every price range imaginable here. And I would, again, sorry, I don't mean to be evasive. I would absolutely need to speak to the person asking that question in more detail to find out what their circumstances are, just simply because it's certainly not in Sydney. It's definitely not cookie cutter. There's all sorts of different zoning regulations, price points, things that you can and can't do. So very much a personal circumstances question. Given what Sydney's done in the past 3 years, I would urge, really, I guess I don't know who's asking the question, so why does it need to be a renovation? Does it need to be in Sydney? The whole point of what we're talking about here is to open people's minds beyond Sydney because of what Sydney has done in the past few years, and to not force capital growth from a renovation that is tricky to do in an area that's boomed really in 3 years. I think there's potential elsewhere.
Yeah. Philip is asking questions about some of the regional markets in New South Wales, like Goulburn and Orange. Kate, do you ever get out to those places?
Not often. I don't mind some of those markets. They haven't featured heavily in what I have been researching recently, to be perfectly honest. I tend to prefer things that are a little bit closer to, let's say, a little more major action. Orange can be a little bit up and down. It depends what the developers are doing, what the gold mine is doing, what the vacancy rates are doing, what the jobs market's doing. It does in itself have quite a nice little diverse economy, but it's a little bit subject to volatility, a bit up and down. So depending on my client's risk profile, it wouldn't be one of the first things I'd suggest, to be honest with you. Yeah.
I think there are good possibilities in regional New South Wales, and you particularly focused on Newcastle as probably the outstanding market in regional New South Wales just recently. But there are, right now, I think regional New South Wales has lots of possibilities, but it's very careful when you're buying regional markets that you do buy the right one, because there's some really good ones and there's some pretty ordinary ones, and it's important to understand the qualities to look for.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got lots of other questions, and we could be here for another couple of hours answering them, but
I'm here.
The people, the attendees numbers are dropping off as people need to go back to work, etc. What I would suggest to people is I'm sorry for those whose questions we haven't got to, but we could be here for another hour and still not get to everybody's questions. I would suggest that you follow up and contact Kate Hill. Her contact details are on the screen right now. Kate at advisable.com.au, and the mobile number 0404 117 477. And I would recommend that you follow up with Kate and ask your questions and talk about the sorts of services that she can provide. And also, people are also welcome to contact me at Hotspotting if there's a question they particularly want to direct at me as well. Always happy to answer people's questions and help if we can. Kate, do you want to reiterate anything before I do the final sign-off for people?
Please keep in mind that there's a whole world of information out there. The bulk of it is, please just don't even read it in the media. It's nonsense. And talk to professionals, even if it's not me. Please talk to people who are qualified to give you good property investment advice. It's so important that you don't make a mistake with things like this. That's my most important message.
Yep, I wholeheartedly agree. Well, thank you, Kate. I thought that was a great presentation. Lots of great information. I like the way your slides were presented with those key charts and maps, giving a very easy one-glance snapshot of a market with lots of knowledge behind it. I think people out there, I hope you found it as informative. I learned things listening to Kate. She does get around the country and she knows some of these markets really intimately, that intimate knowledge was on display here today. So thanks for your great presentation, Kate. Thanks for everyone for participating. We had a particularly strong crowd today. Bear in mind that we have recorded it. We will send you, all people who registered for today's webinar, a link so you can watch it again at your leisure. If you do have further questions or interested in Kate's services, please follow up. The contact details are on the screen, and you're also welcome to contact me, Terry Ryder from Hotspotting. So thanks everybody for participating. Thank you, Kate. Thank you. Bye for now. We'll do another one of these again soon because I think this has been a major success. Thanks, Kate.
Wonderful. Talk to you soon. Bye.